Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Destiny from Desphixs and welcome back to another video in the e-commerce project using Django. In this one, we'll be talking about data structures and models in Django. That is what we'll be doing. Hopefully you will enjoy the video and learn something new. Consider dropping a like, subscribing to the channel, and also checking out some of the links in the description below. So let's get started. In programming, a model is a way to define the structure of your data. It's basically a class that represents a database table, and each attribute of that model corresponds to a field in the table. To better explain it, imagine you have a box of toys and you want to keep track of them. Each toy has some details like its name, color, and how many of those toys you have. That is how models are in programming. Think of a model like a special piece of paper where you write down details about each toy. This paper helps you remember everything about your toy, its name, its color, or maybe how many of the toys that you have. And you can create a toy model that tells you what information you need for each toy. It simply means that each toy will be stored in the toy model. So let me give you an example. You might include fields of the toy's name, and let's say you include its color and the quantity that you have. So if you have a teddy bear, you can write down its name as maybe teddy bear for its name, color brown, and quantity 3. So that's how models are. If we'll be structuring a product model, it would basically be a table that helps us keep track of all the products we have in our database or in our projects. And this product model is going to have a name, which is the name of the products, and it's going to have like a price and color, or maybe even description and quantity. So hopefully this gives you a rough idea of what models are. To get started with models, I will want you to go ahead and open up your code, and I will close up all this because we won't be making use of that for now. And it's highly recommended that you actually start off with your user authentication model. So I am the one that is highly recommending this because every other model that we'll be creating will be linked to the user model. So to prevent overheads and some secular issues when we actually will start importing models from different apps, let's integrate the models one by one in order. So the very first one that I will be needing will be the user model. So for this one, you want to import a couple of things from Django.contrib.auth.models, import abstract user. Don't worry, I will explain this. And also from Django.utils, you want to import time zone. There you go. And we need a tuple. Okay, I'm going to create that later. So let us start off by creating the new class called user. And I'm going to pass in the abstract user and pass. So Django actually gives us this inbuilt user model that we can use if we don't want to create our own, that has fields like first name, last name, email, password, and dates that we joined and all that. So you don't actually have to manually create a user model whenever you're starting a project. You just need to import the one that Django has already given us. But now I like taking this a step further and extending the default one that Django has given us so that I can add more fields to it. And this can be very useful if your project is going to scale. So if your project is going to scale and in the future, you're like, you know what, I want to add an OTP field to the user model, and you did not extend this, of course, you might still be able to extend it then, but it's going to take a lot of time, resources, and a lot of complexity for you to actually get it to work when your project is already large and very huge. So it's highly recommended that you actually extend it right now when we are still starting the project. And why I want to extend this now is because I will be adding a couple of fields like OTP in the future and some other fields. But for now, I only need 2 fields, which will be the username and the email field. And for the abstract base user, rather abstract user in this scenario, in Django, abstract user is a base class that provides a customizable user model. Remember I said that Django already gives us an inbuilt user model. Now, if you want to be able to customize that user model that Django has given us, you need to go ahead and use something called abstract user, which is a base class that provides a customizable user model to us. And it comes from the Django.contrib.auth, just like we imported over here. So this module allows us to extend the default user model provided by Django, which gives us the ability to do things like, let's say, add or modify fields without starting from scratch and overhauling a whole lot of things. It has a couple of useful features like extending the user model, which is very, very obvious. That's what we're about to do. And adding custom fields, which is what we're about to do. And also authentication and permission. The abstract user, this one that we're about to use, it retains all the built-in authentication and permission features, such as the user authentication, the groups, the permission, so that you can still use Django authentication system seamlessly, even while having your own custom user class. And finally, one of its benefits is customizing user logic, because it can help us override methods from the abstract user to customize it to whatever we want. Don't worry, I'm going to show you guys how all this works as we continue with the project. So the very first thing that I need is a username field. Now this is going to be models.character field. And over here, I'm going to pass in mxle, which is max length, and I'm going to say 255. And for now, I will say null should be true and blank should be true. That should be true. And I need another field. Email should be equal to models.email field. And I want to make this unique, should be true. So let me explain what this field does. And I actually want you to pay attention to this one, because I won't be writing out all the fields that we'll be using. If I've explained what char fields does, in the future, when we are about to use a char field, I will just copy and paste instead of explaining all the time. So in Django, whenever you're looking to work with titles, heading, characters, maybe header 1, header 2, or let's say in a blog application always have a header or a title, then a content. So whenever you want to put in things like headers or title or the name of a product or the name of a user, it's highly recommended that you do this using the character field. So when you want to add a more lengthy and detailed text, you do that using a text field. So now this is going to be a username, a short username that is not long. So we use a character field to it. And over here, we specified this attribute of max length and say, hey, the max length that this character can hold is 200, that this char field can hold, or this field can hold, is 255 characters. Once it gets to 256, you will not be able to impute any other thing into the input field. And null true, blank true means that, you know what, this username can be null and it can be blank. So if a user does not fill this username in, don't break the program, don't yell at them, just leave the field as null. And this actually comes in handy when your application is scaling and when you're going to production. The first case where I like using this is, firstly, when we'll be working with authentication here, we will not be giving the users the opportunity to create an account and put in their username manually. But instead, I want to do this automatically for them. So if you're not giving users the opportunity to put in their username manually and you're doing that automatically for them, you stand a risk of breaking your program in the future if null is false and blank is false. But if null is true and blank is true, which means username is not really necessary, right? It can be blank. If anything happens in the future and null is true, blank is true, our application will keep running as expected till the user receives their model, then we populate their username again. I hope this makes sense. Now, I've built a couple of applications that went live, got a couple of users, and for some reason, we were actually supposed to import users from a CSV file or from a YML file, whatever. And it turns out that the model that was initially worked with in the application had its username fields and its email field as null, false, blank, false, which means all those fields are needed. And in the CSV file, which we'll be importing users from, it actually did not specify any username there and any email, which means it will likely break the program if we go ahead and import it. And if for any reason we actually programmatically configure the username and maybe during the imports, one username missed out, then it's going to break the program. So what I would highly recommend you do is stick with blank true and null true for future cases. And for all application, I believe email must be passed in. Whether you're importing an or a user from a CSV, or whether you're registering using Google authentication or whatever, there must be an email. So that is why I didn't pass in null true and blank true for email. Unique true over here basically means that I want only one user to have one email, because from now on, we'll be using emails to identify users. So unique true over here basically means that, hey, Django, for the email desphixs@gmail.com, I don't want two users to use this email. Two users can use the same username. It's totally okay, but I don't want two users to use the same email. If a user has created an account with desphixs@gmail.com and another user is trying to create an account with that same email, we will send them an alert and say something like, a user has already created an account with this email. And hopefully that makes sense. So that is why we passed in unique true. Email field should be self-explanatory. It's basically the field that accepts only email. If you pass in something that is not valid, maybe you're passing in, instead of desphixs@gmail.com, you just passed in desphixs@gmail.com without the @ symbol, it will yell at you and it will be like, come on, why are you passing in an invalid email? So that is what the email field basically does. Now, two more things that I like passing in is the username field. I will explain this. And I also like passing in the required fields, username. So one of the reasons why I passed in this username here is because I want to use it here in the required fields. Because if you don't pass it in here, Django will find it difficult when you specify over here that required names should be username. But since we will not be logging into our application using username and password, but rather we'll be logging in using email and password, the right question is supposed to be, Destiny, how about we just scrape out everything that has to do with username and just stick with email, right? Yeah, that can actually work, but for creating super users and staffs, Django, the Django creates super user command actually needs you to pass in a username here, even though a username will not be required. So it needs you to pass a username, although you can get around this, but to keep things simple, we need to go ahead and pass in this username here, so that we can still pass it into this required fields here that the Django creates super user needs. Now for this one here, which is the username field, it's self-explanatory. Instead of using username over here as the login field, we want to use email and password. So whatever you pass in here is what it will use alongside the password to log in. So to better explain that, let's say that we had another field here called mobile, and we want users to be able to log into our application using their mobile number and password. So instead of passing in email here, it's already clear. You go ahead and pass in mobile. So users will only use their mobile number to log in. And let's say you even have some kind of secret code that a user needs for them to be able to log in. Now that secret code is what you need to go ahead and pass in here. I hope this makes sense. So yeah, this basically rounds it up for what all this does. Let's go ahead and return a string representation of whatever object we'll be creating for the user, or you can even call it $str. So I'm going to say define __str and pass in self over here. Then I'm going to return self.email. If this seems like a lot, don't worry. Let me explain what it does. So you heard me say $. Let me explain that. $. Basically stands for a small __ or a double __, just like this. Let me show you. So this is $. Okay, so you're saying $str means that we want to do __str like this. In Django, the str method is a special method that you can define in your models to provide a human readable string representation of an object. And when you use the print method on an instance, or maybe when you call this instance, or when it's displayed in the Django admin interface, this method that we just wrote now is called to convert the object to a string. So what does this mean? Whenever you save this model, remember I said that it's a way that Django actually provides you with a human readable representation of the string. Now, what is the inhuman or the unhuman unreadable representation? This is how it looks. So whenever you save this string without actually using the str method, it's gonna return the objects back to you like this. So it's gonna say object1, And now object 1, you want to know if it stands for the first user, which is Destiny, or the second user, which is John. And for all users that you have, it will keep returning this: object 2, object 3, object 4, and so on. Now, we want to tell Django, hey Django, whenever we save a user, please do not return this object 1, object 2 for us. Instead, we want you to return their email. So what Django will do is, Django will then call this over here, and what this will do is it will represent whatever user that gets created with their email, like this. So destiny@gmail.com, and the second one, instead of object 2, it will say sam@gmail.com, and the third one, instead of this, it will say johndoe@gmail.com, and so on. Hopefully you get the idea. So that's basically what this does. Now that we have done that, the next thing that I want to do is override the save method. So I'll say define save, and I'll pass in self, args, and quags. So we pass over here. So let me go ahead and explain what's going on. But I think I opened the terminal that I'm not using. I will delete that and close this back up. Don't worry about the errors for now. We'll fix that later. Apart from passing, just down here, I'm going to say user super should be user. Then I'll pass in self, and then go ahead and save. Save args and quags, like this. Okay. So this pass over here for now, I'm just gonna return. Let me just say print hello. Okay, this is just to make sure that we're not getting. Okay, even if you pass, let me see. Just hold on. Okay, yeah. You see, we're not still gonna get this error. In fact, even if you don't return anything, you're not still gonna get that error. Just make sure that you are indenting this one over here to get into the function. Okay. So what does the save method do? What does all this over here do? In case you have been using this in the past projects, but you don't know what they do, in Django, the save method is used to save instance of a model to the database. That's basically what it does. But don't worry, I'm going to explain so that you better understand. Now, whenever you call this save method over here on a model instance, Django will handle inserting a new record or updating an existing record in the database, depending on whether the instance is new or whether it already exists. In our case here, what we want to do is whenever we save this over here, we call this function. So whenever we create a new user, we will call the save function by default. Now, what we want to check is if the username is empty, then we want to automatically populate it by constructing the username from the email and populating it to the username field. So whenever you save this, what it will do is populate any field that we want based on whatever logic that we have written here. Just like I explained that we are trying to populate the username field if it's empty, but if it's not empty, we don't do anything. Okay. So over here, you might ask, what does the save method do? This one over here. Just like I said, it inserts or updates the record. As simple as that. That is what it does. So if the instance is new, that means it hasn't been saved to the database yet. It will go ahead and create a new record, just like we will specify for the username. But if there is another record here, it will run through the code that we have and try to update it. Okay. Another question is, why do we pass args and quags here? So I want you to know that in Django, it usually means that a function or a method can accept every little information without needing to define every single detail beforehand. And this is super useful when you're working with different situations. Let me cite a scenario. Imagine you're at a party and you're helping serve snacks. Sometimes people ask for different kinds of snacks like chips, cookies, or even fruits. Now, args is like saying, hey, I can take any number of snack requests. It means you can accept a list of items without knowing exactly how many people will ask for it. So if one person says, I want chips, another says, I want cookies and fruits, you can still handle all those requests efficiently. And quags, on the other hand, is a bit like saying, I can take snack requests, but I also want to know exactly who wants it. It allows you to retrieve keywords arguments, which are like pair of names and snacks. So hopefully you see, args is pretty much a way that you could use to tell a function to accept whatever that comes into it. Quacks is a way that you could use to say, okay, Sam wants cookies and Lucy wants chips. It's a way that you could then use to detail down the information that you'll be passing into a method. So that is basically what we are doing here. So now what we did over here was go ahead and save it, then still pass args and quacks. So now to write the actual function that we'll be using to perform this operation, it's quite easy. Firstly, let's construct the username by saying email underscore username or underscore should be equal to self.email.split at. This one is quite explanatory. Let me quickly show you what it does. So over here, we have an email, desphixs@gmail.com. Whenever you call this split method at the at, what it will do is it will immediately split this one like this and this one like this, and the at will be gone. So now it takes this first one, which is Desphixs, and stores it in this variable here, email username. It takes this other one, which is gmail.com, and stores it in this underscore. So this underscore, you can as well call it whatever you want. So you can call it whatever you want, but based on the fact that we will not be using it, I just give it underscore because we will not be using the gmail.com. We just need this one. So now it makes sense that whatever email the user pass in, we take the first value of the email and use it as the username. But now the question might be, okay, how do we then assign it to the exact username field? Firstly, you need to check if not self.username, then you need to go ahead and say self.username. That should be self.username should be equal to the email username, and we are done. So whenever we call self the email, self the username, you're basically saying, hey, go back to this model here and grab the username. So self means come back here and grab whatever field that we are calling, in this instance email, in this instance username. And just like this, congratulations, we are done with the user model. So for the profile model, it's going to be a little bit fast because I've explained most of the things. We will just say profile and now pass in models.model. So now you can see that we did not use the abstract user anymore. That is because remember that the abstract user basically helps us extend the default Django user that it already has for us to add our own functionality and customizations to it. But now we want to create a new model from scratch that Django does not have. What you need to tell Django is, hey Django, I'm passing in models.model. It means that I want to create a new model over here called profile, a new one that doesn't exist. I'm not trying to extend anything or customize anything. I want to create a brand new model. Now, this profile model is going to take a user. So user is going to be models.foreign key. I'm going to explain what foreign key is. Passing user on the lead should be equal to models.cascade. So this is a new field called user, same as the username, same as the email. Now we said models.foreign key. Foreign key, okay, my bad. This is supposed to be a one-to-one field. Okay, please don't forget that one-to-one field. So starting with one-to-one field. One-to-one field is a way that you could use to tell Django, hey Django, I want you to link this profile model to this user model. Which means whenever Destiny creates an account, we create a profile for Destiny and we link the profile of Destiny and the Destiny's user account together. One-to-one field, then make sure that Destiny cannot have two profiles and two profiles cannot have one user, Destiny. I hope this makes sense. So let's say we created a user called John here, and then we used one-to-one field. What we're going to do is, as soon as we create this user, we will create a profile for them. But take note, this is not the code to create a profile. I'll still show you guys the code to do that. So we create a user, and let's say we create a profile for them. Now, this one-to-one field here will make sure that this model for profile is attached to this username here, and it makes sure that only one profile, one user. That's just it. On delete should be equal to models.cascade basically means, hey, whenever we delete this user here that is linked to this profile, what becomes of the profile? What should we do to the profile? Cascade keyword here basically means go ahead and delete the profile whenever the user gets deleted. So that's what it does. So as soon as this user gets deleted, it will go through the profile and see what user got deleted and also delete their profile. Because it really does not make sense keeping a user when they don't have any profile anymore. So that's why we did this. Other ones that you could use are things like set null. You could also use do nothing. And I think for now, those are the basic ones that you could use. Okay. But take note, whenever you're using set null and do nothing, make sure to pass in null should be true and blank should be true. That is the first one. Now we also need image. This is going to be models dot image field. And I'm going to upload to, or just for now, let's upload to images. And I'm going to say default should be. Now this one is up to you. If you want to pass a default, if you don't want to pass a default, you can still leave this out. But let's say default should be equal to default user dot jpg. And I want to leave this as null can be true, blank can be true. So a user that's created an account might decide not to upload any profile pictures. We don't want to force them to do that, so we leave it as null true, blank true. I close the sidebar so that we'll have more space to work with. Now I'm going to create another one called full name. This should be models.character field. I believe I've explained character field, so we will not be explaining this again. 255. And over here, I'm going to pass in choices should be none. I'm going to show you guys how to create that later. Null should be true, blank should be true. Default, you can leave default as empty string or you leave it as none, but it's okay if you don't want to pass anything in there. So I think I made an expensive mistake. Please duplicate this full name field and change this one to mobile. Duplicate it again and change it to user type. Leave the choices only for the user type one. Remove the choices for the full name and also for the mobile. Okay. And for the user type, change the default to be none. So let me explain. Now, this image over here uses an image field, which means that we are trying to work with an image. Okay. Now, this one over here uses a character field, which I have explained. Null true, blank true means that this full name can be empty and our application should not break. Mobile over here is self-explanatory, same as this one, but the field name is called mobile. User type here is also self-explanatory. It basically means that are we trying to create a vendor or a user? But now we passed in choices, which means we don't want to allow users to manually type in what type of account they are creating. Rather, they should be able to select it from a drop down. And you might be asking, okay, so where is the drop down? How is it going to work? Now, this is where we have to create it. So somewhere here, say user underscore type should be equal to, then here we pass in vendor. And then here we pass in customer. Good. So this is a tuple. So now we take the user type and put it down here. And that is it. We are done. So one more thing that I like doing is returning the same thing here. The string representation and the save method. I believe I have explained this. So what we could do here is return self.user. So if you return self.user just like this, it will break the program. Only when it won't break the program is if you turn this into a string. Because take note, the string method over here, just like the name sounds, needs to return only a string and not an object or a number or something. Okay? You can even return a number. It's not going to cause an issue, but don't return a full object. So if you're going to return an object and you don't want to use the str method to convert whatever you're returning to a string, you could say return user dot, you could say return self dot user dot username. Because if you go back to the username field here, you can see that it's a string in a character field, which means it's not going to break and it's not going to cause an error. Same thing happens for here. We check if not self.user.username, self.user.username should be equal to, okay, if not self.fullname. Let's work for the full name because we've already handled the username in this one. I was initially checking to handle the username from here too, but since there is another one called full name, let's handle that. So we say, remove this, check. If not self.fullname, self.fullname should become self.username. user dot username. So we basically check if the full name here is empty and we have created an account for the user. Take whatever their username is and populate it in the full name so that the full name is not blank. I hope that makes sense. Now to save, what we want to save is the profile model. Please do not forget that. And after you have done this, that is basically it. That is it. Open up your terminal again. You can see that we're experiencing 4 issues. The first thing I want you to do is open up your settings PY. Scroll all the way to here where we have the media root and set alt user model to set it to user alt dot user. So most of these errors that we are getting down here is basically trying to say, hey, Destiny, you have overridden the default Django user and you added your own customization. But the thing is that we are finding it difficult to locate where the new user is, where the new user model is. So that's why we just told it, hey, the new user model, in case you're looking for it, is in the user auth app and it's called user. I hope this makes sense. That's why we specify the auth user model here. So let's see. Scroll all the way to the bottom, drag this. And now we seem to be getting dependency on app with no migration user auth. So what does this mean? It basically means that the user auth app here has a dependency and it doesn't have any migration. So you know what we could do? Let us start off by running Python manage py, make migrations. I believe we should get an error, but let's see. There you go. And I'm also going to run Python manage.py migrate. Okay, this is the error that I am talking about here. And also we seem to be getting this python.env could not pass statement. Okay, I'll look into this later and see what's going on. So this error over here is quite self-explanatory. Whenever you see this error that says migration of the admin is applied before its dependency user auth, it means that the admin model that we applied when we worked in the last 2 videos is actually now depending on this user auth model that we just created. But the problem is that this user auth, this new user model that we created does not have any migrations. So the admin literally don't know how to actually get around this. One thing I would recommend that you do is this. Come over to your code and delete your dbsqlite 3. So delete this. And I want you to run py manage py, make migrations for the user auths. That's the first one you should do. You see no changes detected. Then also I want you to go ahead, migrate the user auths. See, we migrated the user auths. Then I want you to go ahead and run migration without any app or anything. Then also run migrate without adding any app or anything there. There you go, it's working now. So what we did now was firstly apply the user auths because the admin depends on it. If you're applying the admin before the user auths, you're gonna break your program. The admin depends on the user auths, so it doesn't make sense that you're applying the admin before its dependency. That's why we firstly did Python manage.py migrate user auths. We specifically said, hey, migrate user auths, don't migrate any other thing. Then after it's migrated user auths, we then run Python manage.py migrate, which means you should not migrate every other thing, including the admin. You can see that's what it did over here. Now migrated the admin and also sessions. So with this now, if you go ahead and run your server, let me run my server, we shouldn't have an error. Good, our server is running perfectly well. So you can then go ahead and open this up and view it, but you won't be able to see anything in your admin because you need to register this here. So I want you to go ahead and say from, that should be from user auths imports models. Then you need to register this by saying admin.site.register. I want to register models.user, and I also want to register models.profile. And now let's see what we have. There you go. Can you see what we are getting? Don't worry, I'm going to look into this error and show you guys how to fix it later. So with this now, that's pretty much everything that we need. So now go ahead, open up your website again and reload this page. And now we are logged out because remember now we have set up this to log in using email and passwords only, which means we need to create a new super user. create super user, and we need to pass in the email. I'm going to say destiny@gmail.com. gmail.com. For the username, I'm going to say Destiny. For the password, Destiny321. I don't think that's correct. I think I made a mistake. There you go. I made a mistake. Good. That's working now. So go ahead and run your server again and let's log in. Email is destiny@gmail.com. Please do not forget that. Password is Destiny321. Now you can see that we will be able to log in using email and also using password. Go ahead, log in, and there you go. So now here is the user model. You can see that we have Destiny as a user here, and you can also see that we have the username and email field that we created. Then you can see that if you come over to the profile, we don't have anything because we are not automatically creating a profile now when a user creates an account. Don't worry, we're going to do this later, okay? So that was it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and learned something new. In the next one, we'll get started creating the product models, the categories, every other thing that we'll be needing basically. Yep, that's going to be it. Also, check out the links in the description below if you're looking to download the materials that we are using for the projects, like the settings PY, the requirements, the ENV, so that you don't actually stay behind. And also, if you want to get the full source code, if you scroll down a bit, you can still see the step-by-step guide on how to get the source code. And consider popping in your email here at desphixs.io to stay updated as soon as we launch the amazing features that we are building to help us get better at programming. That is going to be it. I hope to see you in the next video. And until then, mad love. Peace out.